All right. Another day in the labs. So what's up, everyone? Yeah, we're going to do some more labs today in Try Hack Me. Um, we have been chugging along, knocking some stuff out, and we're going to continue to take that journey. I'm just checking one more time, make sure we look good everywhere. We are streaming, and should be good. Should now be live. Cool. Yeah, so let's dive in. I'll go ahead and share my screen and we can see what we got. Let me open up chat to make sure I can see everything as it pops up. Although sometimes I get into what we're doing and I forget to look. And here we go. All right. I think last time we were working on, well, we went through billing with a couple of special guests, and I was also working on a particular one. I think it was one of the Mr. Robot rooms because I hadn't done it before. Oh, we're definitely not doing buffer overflow. I don't. My head hurts enough today as it is. Steel Mountain. That's what we're working on. So let's go ahead and kick this off, and we'll pick back up. So this one is gaining access with Metasploit, and then we're going to enumerate with PowerShell. There's a lot of cool PowerShell tools out there to utilize. I will say from real world practical experience, PowerShell is not the way to go unless you're doing something custom. A lot of downsides there. You can you can utilize some of the underlying C# to execute stuff, and you can get around like app blocker and some other things going that way. But PowerShell, a lot of companies are logging it, and a lot of pretty much all the major tools you would utilize are being detected, so you wouldn't actually be able to execute them even if you had Defender on. So unless you're customizing your PowerShell scripts, then you're going to run into stuff. And yeah, so keep that in mind. A lot of these tools you're going to be doing, especially these easy boxes, they are well signatured. That's what we say when they've built specific detections or specific logic to identify these scripts being executed on a system. And so if we're looking at it as an adversarial, we're going to want to change that so that we don't get caught. I'm gonna just mute the mic. The dog might go crazy while we set up what we need to do with VMware. Looks like he wasn't super noisy. All right, so let's continue. Um, so we do see something here we haven't seen before where it does not respond to ICMP. So that is a specific type of traffic. It may respond to TCP ping, which is something else you can do in Nmap, that is. So we're going to start over. I've already answered one of these questions, but let's actually start from scratch. These are all of our previous interpreter sessions, which is fine. I'm going to clear this and we'll just do a quick nmap run of the IP address here. Should come back pretty quick if I remember correctly. There should be actually a website specifically for this. Yeah, okay. So this is what it was. And what it was asking for is that, well, we need to figure out what it is. So there's going to be just a really common exploit available in Metasploit. So it's a big hint to get our initial shell. So we just have to figure that out. But while we do that, I'm sure we'll do this through the initial access. You probably can hear my dog howling, and it's having a Malamute. Malamute dead life, hashtag, whatever. So we had already done that. So when we get our scan back, we should see this port, and then we'll identify it. But let's take a peek that at the first question and work our way down. So who is the employee of the month? We don't know, but if we look at not the image, we want to look at the source, we can see that Bill Harper is indeed who that person is. So cool. So that answers the first question. Um, Here's our stuff. So we have specifically targeted port 80, which works. And let's go ahead and also do a specific scan of port 80 as well. And we'll do TAC A. We'll give it the IP address. And we'll also do a TAC PN. That means no ping. We assume it's up. So we just want to do our port scanning for it. All right. So now we'll check out port 80 because we do know it exists. And one of the things that I recommend is if you are actually doing a real penetration test, manually going to some of these sites and while your larger scans work, so manually interrogating them, that's the fancy buzzword we would use to make sure these are up. So like 80 is a good one to check out, right? There's quite a few SMB and NetBIOS types of discovery things we can do. We can check that this is up, but we could connect to it and see if it gives us any information. It's probably just going to show a prompt, but you never know. And then 8080, obviously, that's a good one. These other ones, which we'll start getting good at, is looking at these and being like, well, these aren't particularly useful, so I won't waste my time bothering with them until later. Because one of the keys to being a good pen tester is prioritizing what you're going to do with all the data that you're going to be collecting as you go through this. All right, so 8080. So that's the other port the web server is running on. And I remember this being goofy because we were trying to figure out what the format was. So Rigetto. Let's figure out how we got to that. But we do have in here that it is an HTTP file server, which is right here. And let's see what we did for that. So we have this here. And maybe if we click, oh, that's what we did. So we just clicked this, which is just a additional info, and we can see that is indeed Rigetto. So that answers that question. All right, so let's find our attack. I do know there is stuff in here. It is case sensitive. Um, we have a couple of attacks here targeting very specific versions. So we have one for 2024 that's pretty recent. We also have this older one back from 2014. Both of them are RCE, which means we can run arbitrary code on the underlying system. Now, as with any exploit that you utilize, we do need to narrow it down, right? If it is a later version, the second 2014 exploit's not going to work. So we do need to figure out where we're at, which version, and we can do that with this 2.3, and that's server time. That's not going to give us any information. So this is saying FS3 is expected this year, and we are on 2.3. So what we can do is select one and then look for other info in Metasploit to provide additional context and help us shape which one we're going to go with. So let's go with 0. although I would expect it to be an older one, but that's okay. We'll start here. So this is what we're looking for. We want to know which versions it is. So this is 2.x, so we're 2.3, which means this should work. And it's an unauthenticated server-side template injection. So the key piece here is that it's unauthenticated. So we don't have to do anything to get credentials. We can do this attack and get arbitrary code execution. So great, right? This looks to be exactly what we need. So we just need to add our configurations and we should be good to go. So first thing is going to be the IP address. So set our host to that and set lhost to 0. We want the interface and that will automatically correct itself to the proper it'll automatically correct itself to the proper IP address. So whatever IP address is on that port. So that should be our VPN IP address. So we do have something here that has target URI, and my guess is that we're gonna have to change this to 8080 and just do a slash here because I don't think this is the server. I think this is just a website. Um, but we could do one and then do the other. We could probably do some work and do some more research on this particular vulnerability, or we can be lazy and say YOLO and just go for it. So let's set target URI to slash. I'm pretty comfortable with that. And then set our ports 8080. So the thing with any of these is you have to make sure whenever you're configuring an exploit to target the actual application that you're trying to target. If none of this is targeting the specific service, it's not going to work, right? So in this case, if we left it on port 80, it doesn't look like HFS is running on port 80. It's running on 8080. So if we targeted, say, like an Apache server with this Rigetto attack, it's obviously not going to work. It's like trying to use the wrong key in the wrong lock. It's just not going to work. So we do need to make sure we configure that. Now, theoretically, this should work unless I mess something up, and it did break. So let's see what happened here. Show options. Something might have been goofy. So we have target host is here. This is correct. So maybe it is 80. 80. We can set our port at 80 and see if that is correct. I didn't think it would be unless that's the way the application works where that is the administrator port. So no, it's not doing either one of them. Let's load up the other one and see what it says. So this one is vulnerable to 2.3b. So the other one is 2.3m. We don't know the specific version. We do know it's 2.3. So this could be the very well be the one that we needed, and that's why the other one didn't work. Again, we need to set our interface. We need to set our host. Make sure that's correct. I don't know how many times I've messed up just the basic things just because I'm moving too fast. Um, And we should be good. Looks like we have a classic Windows interpreter shell. That payload may need to be adjusted based on architecture, but it is reverse, which is fine. And let's see if we get something. So we can see at the top here that it is spinning up a server for it. And I don't think it'll work because we are targeting 80 again. So there we go. Um, let's set it to 8080. See if this works. Looks like it is working this time. So again, I was correct. The other exploit just didn't work for whatever reason. But we did get what we expected, which is great. And we can go back over here and fill in what we need to do. So they're looking for the CVE number for the exploit that we utilize. So let's grab that before we move on. And that exploit should be in the description somewhere. So maybe this is what they're looking for. We'll find out. I think that's too long, so they might want a shorter one, maybe just the year in the last bit. Yep, that's exactly what they're looking for. So let's fix that. Yep. All right, we'll submit. Should be good. I'm unauthorized. What? I swear every time this thing logs me out when I'm trying to hack stuff. This is super annoying. All right, so let me stop sharing and let me log back in. I reloaded this thing like 5 times in preparation for it breaking, and it just the cookie decided to stop working right when we started working. So how about that? Try hack me. Fix that, please. It's very annoying. All right, so give me a second. We'll log back in. Get going again. My extraordinarily long passwords. All right, we are back in business. Let me reshare my screen. All right, great. Maybe we can be authorized at this time. So it's saying we weren't joined before, although we have an IP address. So we just broke something. Um, that's fine. Let's reload and see if it fills in our answers. It did. It should fill in our answers. Okay, it did. All right. It does that. It acts buggy sometimes. So if you have like stuck in a weird like phantom session, it kind of works but doesn't kind of work. It doesn't load everything. Whatever. I think we just created a new term, phantom session. All right. So we have another correct answer. Look, we started hacking. We started a 1-day streak. How about that? Use Metasploit to get an initial shell. What is the flag? So now we need to get a flag. We'll see if we can find it. Flags are usually in the user's on the user's desktop, so we can give that a whirl. I always forget which syntax it wants. Maybe just like this. Okay, that works without the drive letter. Alas, we'll check here first, but my guess is it's going to be on the desktop. And there it is, cat user.txt. All right, so interesting. So we did get some goofy non-displayable characters. I don't know if that's going to mess anything up or not. It did not. Okay, cool. So we're good. All right, so now we're in the privilege escalation. So we quickly did discovery. We quickly found our exploitation. We did these quickly because we were already kind of ahead of the power curve here, um, because we had done some of the work up front um, last week. And now we are in the privilege escalation. That means we're under a normal user and we need to figure out how to get to an elevated user. So you're almost always going to have to go through this step whenever you're working through an attack chain, because most of the time you're not going to end up as an elevated user unless you lucked up, or got a really good like SMB exploit like Eternal Blue. That's instant local administrator, or you got admin cred somewhere. All right, so let's dig back into this section and see what it's asking us to do. Now that we have initial shell on this machine, we can further enumerate the machine and escalate our privileges to root. I am root. To enumerate this machine, we will use a PowerShell script called PowerUp. The purpose is to evaluate a Windows machine and determine any abnormalities. Cool. So let's go download it here. Oops. Um, we'll right click and download. Or not. Save link as. That's what we're looking for. My brain's not working. Yep, that should suffice. So what we're going to do is we're going to download this, then we're going to upload it to a target system. One of the things we will have to be cognizant of, just like we have to on every other system, is where we drop the file. So just like last week when we were working a Linux system, we have to have write privileges to that directory and execute privileges. So as a user, we typically have those in our directory so we can utilize that. But there are other directories that all users have write, execute, read access to, read, write, execute, if you want to say it in the right order. So like temp's a really good one. Tasks, a lot of times provide that access. So there are other ones, and sometimes we do have to go on the journey of finding a place to drop our payload and execute it. But in this case, they're actually telling us where we want to go, and that's desktop. So we will upload it to that location. So some people may get confused actually with the difference between upload and download. So you can think about it in terms of where you're at with Metasploit. So Metasploit, when I'm downloading something, I'm downloading it to my actual system I'm working from. So my Kali instance in this case, when I'm uploading, I'm moving a file, pushing a file to another system. And so that's one of the benefits of having a interpreter shell, is that we can upload and download files pretty easily instead of having to set up a transfer mechanism um, that you would normally have to do. So using like PowerShell to download, a lot of times you'll see that people using PowerShell to download stuff onto a system. Cert util used to be a good trick on Windows. For Linux, we have wget, curl, things like that. So again, we're just going to use Meterpreter for this. So let us do upload. And we also have to think about, like last week, we were talking about how you always have to keep in mind where your stuff is and where your files are and how you're trying to move them. So we downloaded our file to downloads on Kali. And so that's the path we need to give it in order to get the file moved. So we'll go home, Kali, downloads, and power up. So a lot of people get confused where their stuff goes, but that's okay. Takes time to get familiar with it. Now we need to, I like to just drop into a shell and then execute whatever. And so we can go ahead and do that, where we can get into a PowerShell shell by calling PowerShell. I don't think the casing matters here. And then we want to do dot method of loading a script. And then once it loads, we're loading it into memory. It'll stop. And then what we'll do is we will call a particular function. In this case, we're going to call invoke dash all checks, and then it's going to do its thing. And then we have to wait around and figure out what to do based off of the output from the tool. So, yeah, it's a good time. We should get a PowerShell um, PowerShell script somewhere. It looks like they may be doing something differently. Type load PowerShell in the interpreter. I've never done that. I've done it this way. Let's see if we get something better if we do it this way. So this is a cool thing of me going through these is I still learn stuff. Like I was like, oh, I didn't know you could do that. Just like this. And it's great. It's good to learn new tricks because sometimes things just don't work. So if you have a bag of 10 ways to execute a file, great. You might run into a case where none of them aren't going to work, and that one other one you just happened to learn the other day works. And then, okay, cool, this is it. So we'll do PowerShell underscore shell. So it drops us right into a PowerShell shell. Sweet. And now we can do these other things. So this is kind of interesting. So if you're taking notes, if you're watching this and you're doing what I always advise people, which is to take notes, make sure you're jotting this down. This is a new way to execute PowerShell. So there's a couple methods we saw where I just load PowerShell in a shell. So I drop into a shell, load PowerShell with the string PowerShell. Or in interpreter, we can say load PowerShell and then PowerShell underscore shell. So there's two methods right there for you to get into a PowerShell shell to do stuff. And we can also see where one happened to work much better than the other one. If you were watching a second ago, it wasn't quite loading, it was struggling. And it could just be the way it's executing, because a lot of times what I'll end up doing is when I execute scripts, so like WinPs or LinPs, I do it in the background and output it to a file, because sometimes just the way it works, it'll look really goofy, be hard to read, um, and may cause the shell to freeze or something, but it's still running in the background. And if it does break, we can just create a new shell and pull it down so we can analyze it on our Kali system. So you'll start getting a feel for stuff being jacked up and figuring out ways to work around it. All right, so this is good stuff here. We have a lot of stuff here. Well, not too much. We have a handful of output from PowerUp. So PowerUp again is a classic script, enumeration script that may not necessarily work now. And so it looks for different things. In this case, we're looking for unquoted service paths. And we can see that here, check unquoted service paths, and then it's showing us these. So like everything else you run on a Windows system, not everything will work that it finds, and it's up to you to kind of look through it and prioritize stuff that is interesting. Like this IO bit, this may be something to me when I see something that's unusual, that's like a hint, Mike, that's probably the thing you want to do on this CTF like box. So IO bit, UN server. So these may be pretty interesting. Um, but I'm sure it's going to point us in the right direction instead of us just screwing around with it. So we can see all these are under us, which is cool. We actually want something that's running as a different user. So these are cool, but local system is probably what we want. So, okay. So start name, local system. So these will probably all suffice. Let's see what it says though. Let's see what we're supposed to do. Completes. take a close look at can restart option that is set to true. What is the name of the service which shows up as an unquoted service path? So it's asking for something specifically. Can restart true. So this is one of them. Can restart false, can restart false. So actually not the ones I was thinking of. This is different, but the same subset. We can see it's in the same path. So that's interesting. And it wants to know what is it. So we'll feed that to it. I don't remember if it asked for the name or yeah, so the name. So we'll feed it the name here. I was going to say or the name of the file. So we have that. All right. So now it wants us to, the can restart option being true allows us to restart the service. The directory to the application is also writable. This means we can place the legitimate application with our malicious, we can replace the legitimate application with our malicious one, restart the service, which will run our infected program. So this is pretty interesting. A couple of things we can point out here. So it's asking us to replace a binary. So in the real world, I wouldn't just straight up replace the binary. I would leave it on there. Um, this is also kind of one of those situations where it's kind of sketchy. We may be impacting operations, and you're going to have to make a tactical decision at the time of how you want to handle it, right? Are we really going to have a huge impact here, or can we get it to execute our shell and then move back the other binary? So something to keep in mind. Okay, so these are all decisions we have to make when we're in the middle of a pen test, and we want to make sure we're not negatively impacting our client long term. Maybe short term, we have to in order to make the attack work. Um, like this case where we could swap the binary, get our execution, and then swap it back. Um, and that's okay. We can do that. The other thing to keep in mind, so what's important about this restart the service piece is if we want to trigger this, we have two choices. If if it's an active service, one is we have the ability to restart, which we do here, or we have to wait for it to naturally restart. So one of two options. Being that this is kind of time limited where we don't want to wait forever, we don't want to restart the system because that could impact the client also. It, we won't. We're looking for one particularly that we can control. So in this case, we're going to restart this service. So with that being said, we do need to get our IP address and construct our payload because we need to, it's asking us to create an interpreter or a MS Venom payload and dropping that on the system and replacing the binary. So we're going to use MSF Venom to do that, which is part of the Metasploit framework. Um, a couple of things to keep in mind. None of these by themselves will work ever in the real world because they're going to be detected. They are signatured. So we've already talked about that. Uh, it's just blatant. It's not going to work. So construct something that will. I almost always use custom payloads or some sort of modification to get the payload to work. All right. So let's go ahead and just drop this in downloads here. And we're going to get this uploaded to the target system. So one thing we may want to do also in a real pen test is pull this data down. So copy it and drop it into a file for later. If you're not logging your commands, a lot of people do like to log their commands. In this case, we're not. I didn't start any logging, but whatever. We can exit this. There we go. Now we're back into an interpreter shell. We do want to pivot to where this file is because this is what we're going to want to replace. So we just want the path. And what we do see is that there is a space here. So we're going to have to make sure we put it in quotes so it can get to where we need to get to. Control Shift V. And we have some issues again with syntax. Let's see what it's looking for. Unmatched quotes. So this is kind of interesting because it's interpreting both of these quotes, but they do look matched. But this is an escape. So we are probably have to escape this one and we may be okay otherwise. Okay, we were. So it was interpreting this front backslash as an escape. So it wasn't actually using this as a backslash. It was using it as an escape. So we had to escape the escape to get it to be interpreted as a normal backslash. This window's for you. You're going to have to learn how to deal with those types of things. In Interpreter, we could have used Linux formatting for paths, but I just copied and pasted. All right, so let's just make sure we are where we are supposed to be. And what we're going to want to do here. So upload your binary and replace the legitimate one, then restart the program to get shell. So we are going to have to do a couple of things. Actually, one, we're going to have to create a listener for our reverse shell. And so this is just a Windows shell. So we should be able to catch it with netcat. We'll do that. We could have adjusted this to be an interpreter payload as well. We did not. And we can look at that after this actually. So we also want to point out this is a service format. So a service is definitely different than a normal executable. There is a specific format for Windows services. So do keep that in mind. If you want a service that's not going to error out, you do need to use that specific format. All right. So with that being said, let's create a listener really quick. And I need to zoom in. Time is flying today. It's already 8 o'clock here on the East Coast, almost 8:10. So we're down to 50 minutes left in this hacks session. So not a ton of time left. So we were doing netcat NC, LVP. We utilized whatever port it had in here, 4443. We were using that before. Cool. And so we do need to replace this file. Our file was advanced.exe, but that isn't necessarily the name of the advanced. So we don't even see it in here. What we need to replace is the file that's specified up here, which is asc service.exe. So that is the file, and we should be able to see it in here. asc service.exe. So this is the file we're going to replace. Let's see if I can make a copy of this file in Interpreter. I forget the commands. And it should just be something pretty straightforward. System commands, still token. It's probably not going to be in there. Actually, it's here. So probably copy source to destination. Maybe rename. Let's remove, delete, specify file, move. Is there a move? Move's pretty typical. Okay, so let's move. Let's use move. So we're going to say move this to this dot bak. Oh, we just have to, won't let us move the file. Interesting. Let's see if we can do this. Okay, it did let us do that. So we couldn't move it, but we could rename it. So now if we do an ls, we should see two versions, one that is a .back and one that is without. So this is kind of pretty common nomenclature where we just name it like .back, .backup, just so we know that it's the original. And if we need to, we can revert, like I was talking about before, where if we care about system stability and ensuring the client gets back to where it was, its baseline, we can quickly roll it back. Now we need to upload our file, and it's going to be advanced. And I'm trying to remember if we can do this. Um, hmm. So it did not allow us. I was hoping it would allow us to just overwrite specifically. So we may need to turn the service off and back on. Okay, so the file is locked. So we do need to um, figure out how to unlock the file. I think it's currently being utilized by the service, therefore we can't do anything with it. And so we have it uploaded. I'm just making sure I didn't miss anything. Upload your binary. Boom, there. Replace the legitimate one. I wonder if it will let me delete it instead. Let's see if it will. RM. No. So it seems like it's locked. Let's see if we can stop the service. I don't remember what the stop service Windows command line. So it's important to specify. So we could say a net stop that may release it, even though it says we have restart privileges. So let's drop into a shell. Net stop. And now we got to find our way back. What I'm going to do is just copy this so we have it over here. Typically I do this, but when I move fast, don't typically follow that. So I know it's hard to see. My apologies. What we're doing is we're just grabbing the service name here. And we should just give it here. It did stop successfully. So if we go, I think we can do always forgets what the Windows commands are. We could go back into an interpreter shell and then move the file, but now I'm trying to remember Windows rename file CMD. Fine. That's important that it's important that you specify command line because a lot of times it'll walk you through how to do it with a UI. So like your regular desktop, but we're obviously not in a UI, so we can't take that approach. I've actually never used Ren. Sounds like an alias to me. Let's try Ren advanced. Or can we do what move? What do we want to do? We could use delete. Let's do that. Nope. We won't delete ASC service .exe or del. And then I'm not typing that again because I'm lazy. So program's denied. Our access is denied. So we can drop a file in there. We have turned off the service, but somehow the file is still locked, which is interesting. Question is, why? Hmm. Let's see. Let's list what our permissions are. Because I was thinking maybe we have an issue with search path, but I don't think that's the case. They didn't say anything about any advanced techniques. Um, so directory CMD. So we can use iCalcula's. See if that will help us. So still mountain build, we have read execute, and we do have write. So we don't have full privileges, but we do have write. So that's interesting. So we could try doing a copy, perhaps, and doing a copy of advanced.exe to not iCalculus to this. So basically, we're just trying to replace it with our payload. So this is our file. So we should see this change to what we're trying to the length of our other file. Okay, so we were allowed to override it. So now we should see that change right here. So we did get the change. So we just couldn't delete. Okay, whatever. Same difference. So it's important to also point out here that if you are running into some issues, continuing to press and learning when to press is important because we could have gave up and like, ah, darn, I don't have access and moved on, but that's not the case. We looked at permissions to understand why we were having issues and we were able to overcome. And that is something you'll get better with over time as well. When you start kind of getting that sixth sense that you can make this work with a little effort and you stick with it. But sometimes it's not worth the time and you'll just have to figure out when to do it and when not to do it, really, right? So now we should be able to go net start. So I think the problem was we just couldn't override it before. Like we couldn't just delete it. And maybe there's just some issues with the way Metasploit was doing his business. But it didn't work. And when we adjusted with just copying from one place and overriding, it worked. Now, we did use netstart to kick off the service again. And so when the service kicked off in that service file, it tells it which file to load. And so it loaded this, which is now our file. And when it loaded it, it executed our Metasploit payload we generated here, not here, here, which is a reverse shell. So it's going to come back to us to that IP address here and on this port here, which happened to be this netcat listener with an L, right? We know that because there's an L there. We set it to the same port, and when it did reach out, we caught it. So now we should be able to say the classic who am I? And we should see NT authority system, which means we are now in God mode on the system. And the reason why we should expect it to be pretty elevated is we know it's running as local system, and that's about as high as you can get on the local system. So Now, the question is, where is our flag file? So is it in root? Maybe. Let's go. Let's take a trip and see if we can't find our root flag. Maybe Windows. And always get stuff mixed up. Let's take a peek. Let's see if it tells us where to go. What is root flag? So we could do one of our funky searches and look for it, or we can keep playing and try to find it. So I'm gonna try one more directory, and if it's not there, we'll move on. Well, we won't move on. We'll try to search for it. In Linux, it's just in simply like /root. In oh, it might be an admin. What am I doing? There's probably an admin. So cd/users sudo cd administrator. You know, this is the problem with doing all this after work is your brain doesn't work that well. Now, pretty much a classic. Offensive security does this as well. They always like to just place things on desktop. So I'm assuming it's there. I keep mixing up Linux commands. So let's do a cat root.txt. Not cat, it's type in Windows. So this is where you'll start getting mixed up. When a interpreter has its own set of commands. So a interpreter, we could have said cat, but we're in a Linux or a Windows shell here, where we have to abide by Windows command line utilities. So big difference. All right, so what did we miss? I think we missed something. Let's mark this as complete. I thought we did already. Maybe not. All right, so great, we did that. So now it wants us to do it without Metasploit. All right, to begin with, we shall be using the same CVE. However, this time, let's use this exploit. All right, so real quick before we do this, we have about 30 minutes. I do want to see if we can't find a solution for searching the file system for a particular file. So let's do cmd search for file. Let's see how fast that it works. Let's see how fast it works. That it works. It works. Right. Let's see. So we have that's not going to do it. Can you do this with dir? That is just directoryless. I'm just reading the syntax here. Directs a search of all folders on the hard drive. Okay, yeah, let's give this a whirl. I've actually never done this. And P option pauses the display after each screen of text. So we probably won't use P, but we will use S. We do want to search the entire OS. So let's construct our thing. We know we just need to change this file name. And you'll always see me stop and read most of the time what we're doing, because if you don't understand what's going on with the command you're running, then you don't know if you need to modify it for your particular use case. So start getting in the habit of reading this stuff you're finding on the internet and ensuring that it is aligned with whatever your goals are. This sounds like it's aligned with our goals. I've never used dir in this way. I would usually use PowerShell or some other utility, but I'm gonna do this because I haven't done it this way, and I like to experiment. So let's actually navigate to the root directory and try it again. So I think the problem before was it was maybe not, maybe this is how fast it is. That is a really, really, really quick search. So that's cool. Again, put this in your notes. This is if you know the file name and you're searching for it, this is a quick way to do it. Dir file /s says search the entire file system. And if we look here, it actually tells us exactly where it's located. So very cool. All right, we can move on to the next piece then. And let's see if we can't wrap up the last bit of this before the end here. So one, we probably need to save link as, oh, maybe not. Let's open this then. So here is, we actually have a script. Cool. So we get to actually practice this outside of Metasploit. If you're seeking the OSCP as a certification that you're shooting for, get used to doing stuff the manual way. I don't remember the rules for it now, and it may be similar back in the day, back when I did it. We were only allowed to use Metasploit once. We could use one exploit. Everything else had to be manual. We could catch shells using Metasploit, but we weren't allowed to actually use the exploits themselves. They wanted us to do it manually so that we could demonstrate our capability, obviously, or that particular skill set. Um, yeah, so let's download this and give it a whirl. So this is one of the things, get in the habit of looking at it and understanding it. We have a Python file and it usually gives us instructions of how to utilize it. So here's our usage. So we need to call Python exploit.py, so or whatever we name the file. Give it the target IP and target port number, and then it will do its thing. We do, looks like we do need to modify this because this is a local IP and local port. And we also have a VBS script that's built in here that is executing on the system. So if we continue reading here, it is running this VBS, but it's also basically doing a reverse shell. So it is launching netcat and connecting back to it. So we need to make sure we have something waiting on it. Again, we'll spin up netcat, get another listener, and capture this. But something to point out here, all of these are executable, or sorry, all of these are customizable to your fancy. So as you progress, as you learn more, you'll start gravitating to specific techniques that you prefer to lean on. I would definitely advise you to try as many as possible and play with these different areas so that you have a bigger bag of tricks you can pull out, and you have just been exposed to more. So definitely do not be afraid to play around with these different things. All right, so with that out of the way, let's open it up and let's modify it and get it ready to go. I think last time I had issues with the freaking folder not open. It was driving me nuts. I don't know what's going on with this thing. But you know what? What I was saying before, we have multiple ways to do things, and so we shall do things a different way. All right, so it should be in our downloads at this point. I don't remember what we called it. It should be this Python file here. And we can just modify it with vim. And what we just need to modify is this piece. So we need to give it our IP. And let me just make sure that is correct. Okay, it is correct. One of the things I would advise, and I don't know if this is common knowledge. is I was going to advise pasting, but it looks like we overrode something. Um, oops, what is going on here? So we need to get back to insert mode. We need to make sure we comment that out. So what I was going to say is I advise always copying as much as possible so that you don't waste time fat fingering items. It happens, especially if you're up till 2 or 3 in the morning working on these things. You're going to mess up. You're going to have a typo, and then you're going to be chasing your tail for several hours trying to figure out why your payload's not working. So just copy and paste stuff like your IP address in your commands because yeah, they can cause a lot of heartache. It's okay. Don't believe me. You'll find out at some point it's going to happen to you, and you're like, okay, yeah, I should probably copy and paste. The other thing to point out here is that we want to make sure we don't have any errors when we're working these. Okay, and that is simply because if we do, it's not going to work. It's going to break, and then we'll have to fix it anyways. So just keep that in mind. All right, so now we need to set up our listener to catch it on port 443. So we're going to say LVP 443. As long as it's not being taken up by another service, it should be available for us to utilize. We don't have any issue, so it is available. Now, with that, we can go ahead and write and quit. That's what WQ means. Um, so I do shift uh, colon or semicolon, which turns it into a colon. Then you can give vim commands. Up to you, whatever editor you want to use. A lot of people use Nano. I just grew up on Vim, so I use Vim, although I'm not a master of either. I just happen to automatically do it. And last thing is that we need to make sure we're running the exploit with the proper Python version. This used to not be a big thing when Python 2 was the pretty much the only um, business in town, but now we have stuff coming out in Python 3, and the old ones are in Python 2. So there is a change in syntax between the two, which can be frustrating. We could probably take a quick look and identify which version this is, if there's any print statements, because prints are done differently. Um, excuse me. Yeah, I don't see as something that would stand out to me. So we'll just execute it with, I'm gonna execute it with Python 2 because my bet is that it is Python 2. And then it said we want HP or IP and IP import. So our IP is this, and our port is 8080, if you remember back to multiple hours ago. Oh man, got hiccups. So we should see something catch here, and I'll zoom in so everyone on the internet can see it. And we'll go ahead and run this, and we should see it catch back, and we did not, so we may have an issue. So we do have to have a web server listening. I didn't read the exploit. I didn't read the exploit, people. I didn't read it. Let's see what it says, so I don't have to figure it out. To begin, you will need a netcat static binary on your web server. If you do not have one, go here, and you will exploit. You'll need to run the exploit twice. The first time will pull your netcat binary to the system, and the second will execute our payload to gain a call back. Interesting. We could redevelop this payload and kind of make it our own and do all this in one go, likely. But let's look at this and understand what it's doing. So def URL, it opens this up and we do save. And then we do exe. So we do need to make sure it is nc.exe. And then we do exe1, which is execute plus VBS3, which is this. So this is going to be execute VBS2. Okay, so let's fix this. What I'm going to do is go ahead and open up another shell. We'll do it like this. Minimize this one. What we will need to do, we really don't need to probably escalate privileges for this. Sudo su, sure. We need to locate inc.exe. It is on here, and we're going to need to move it somewhere that we're going to stand up our web server. So let's just cd downloads, and then let's do a cp, and we'll drop it here. Now we'll do a python tag python tag-m dash http dot server, I think, and we need to be on 80. So we should have this now. That's our server running. And let me zoom in. All right, so we have a web server running. We have our listener on 443, our web server on 80. Our exploit should reach out, grab netcat, drop it on the system, and then execute. So let's try it one more time. We should also see over here, whenever something reaches out to our web server and interacts with it, we should see a log being produced. So we see nc.exe grab 200, which means it was okay. And then we'll run it one more time. We should see a connection now, which we do. Great. Now that piece works. Now, the next thing we need to do is actually do our exploit again, which we could do. So we can do a lot of things here. So one, we could transfer, like download using the shell, download a new interpreter shell, and then pick back up right where we were. We could do a different type of exploit, whatever we want to do. We have a lot of flexibility depending on what you want to do. Sorry, I keep looking down at the screen so I can think about what I'm talking about. um, so we did this. We ran it twice. Congrats. It wants us to also pull down WinPs and pull WinPs to the system using PowerShell -C. So let's find WinPs and then we'll load it onto the system. Here we go. One thing to be cautious of in the real world is we don't want to pull down stuff we don't know. So definitely be careful. I don't know what release we have. Or which architecture we have, but it doesn't seem to matter. Go here. So I just transitioned to where the files should be. Looks like they just have these win.bat files here. Let's see all assets. Here's the rest. So we'll pull this x86 version now. Okay, cool. So here's the fun trick, right? This is in downloads now, so we should be able to pull it down. There's a couple of tricks we can do to get the file to the system. Cert is one, PowerShell is another. You can use a Wimic as well. Let's use cert because it's a classic. And let's cert. So one of the interesting things is that this actually doesn't work that well anymore. It gets picked up by even Defender as something bad because no one utilizes it in this way. So have different methods. One, two is that this is another thing you want to add to your notes, ways to download files, right? We need to know how to move files from system to system. That is a thing in itself. And then 3, is it 3? I don't know. Whatever we're on. We need to prep our command so we can move the file where it needs to move to. Let's see. I don't even remember what the file's name is, so that's what I'm looking up. So this is it. Again, like you're already seeing me utilize some of the stuff I use is I prep my command and mousepad before I execute it, and then we're good. So we're here. What I do want to do is I want to move back to Bill, and we need to make sure we're in Windows syntax. I didn't go back far enough. This is probably a case where it was easier just to do it like normal and like start from the beginning, like, and work our way up. Okay. Anyways, we're here. We're with Bill. Hi, Bill. And we're going to download this file. We can see it pulling down here, and we can see the file name. And it should pop up over here once it's done downloading. And it should give us our shell again. It's probably, I would imagine it's fairly beefy, so it's taking a second. Yeah, and it is. And it's kind of slow too. I've had this hang up on me, and I've had to switch to a better shell. But, whatever works. It finished. So we should see bad.exe because that's what we told it we wanted to name it. And we do. And it was a pretty beefy file. Look at that. Okay, so let's go back to over here, and it wants us to run WinPs now. So let's run WinPs. I almost guarantee it's going to break my shell, and it's going to be a sad day. Okay. So it's finding stuff. It's basically doing pretty much what the other one was doing. This may have more checks in it than the other one. I think this is it's more recent tool than the other one, which is fine. Tools come and go. That's why it's better just to understand. And then we just have to figure out what the heck it's asking. All right, so once we run WinPs, we see that it points us towards unquoted service paths. We can see that it provides us with the name of the service it is also running. What PowerShell-C command could we run to manually find out the service name? So it's probably some sort of PowerShell commandlet that we're executing. We'll just drop this in Google. I was trying to think. I was quiet because I was trying to think of how to format my question, but why not just drop it in the chat? Someone probably has this answer. It's saying get service, but it doesn't line up. Get service, yeah. Or maybe DET-SERVIC. Get service, maybe a flag dash something, and then service name, maybe. This is like the annoying part of figuring it out. So it could be display name, maybe. There's Yeah, there's probably a short way of doing this, and we can play with it. PowerShell C. It's going to drive me nuts. This is the kind of stuff that's annoying to me, and I'll rather just get the answer and then jot it down later. So I think we're going to have something like this, where we're using a flag of some sort, and we could probably go here to better understand this, and it'll tell us if there's a short way. And typically you can just do it with one letter, typically, as long as it's unique enough. Like this one might be DI or just D, maybe the default. Or it may not. And we can just say, so there could be a difference between display name and a normal name. It's a little interesting. So we're looking for, as you can see, there's a lot more information here than we got before. So we got pretty pretty solid information about services and processes and services and what ports they're running on, all this stuff. So it is very, very verbose here. So we got some DLO hijacking opportunities. What we're looking for is services. And a cool thing here is that it points you to a book or a link on Hacktricks, which is a great website. If you haven't come across it, I'd be surprised if you haven't, to be honest. And you can go there to learn more about the attack, which is, you should. You should, especially if you're watching these videos to learn how to hack, you should probably be learning these things. Um, and what we're looking for is stuff like this. So we should be seeing stuff representative of what we saw before. Like there should be a interesting services non-Microsoft. So check if you can overwrite some service binary or perform a DLL hijacking. Also check for unquoted service path. So yep, this is exactly what we did. In this case, I think it does give us the service name, so I don't really know what it's asking. What PowerShell command could we run to manually find out the service name? Let's go to the Hacktricks book. Maybe that has the answer we're supposed to be looking for. Who knows? I appreciate them forcing us to look at stuff, but sometimes it's annoying. But it is good for people to learn to do. So we're looking for a PowerShell command of some sort. That's how we do. This is how we started and stopped the services. We're looking for, maybe this is it. Get service unquoted. No, that's not enough, I don't think. Get child item. We're looking for something that's going to give us the service name. Get child item is not going to do that. Let's see, drivers. We're looking for services. Should probably just control F this because this is taking quite some time. Here we go. Nope, that's running processes. Services. Get service. I think that's our answer, but I'm not sure what it's looking for besides that. So get service. Maybe it's PowerShell C get service. Did I spell it wrong? It's just service, get service. So I don't think it's right. We're off by 2 letters. Or maybe it's in quotes. Format is PowerShell. We could do, but that one makes sense because it's a commandlet. You don't put commandlets in quotes. Hmm. Still Mountain. I am going to cheat and look this up. I keep trying to go to Hack the Box. We're not on Hack the Box, people. We're on Try Hack Me because it's more gentle for newbies, which is okay. And we are looking for, this is the initial way. Start service. They did it slightly different. Did I miss my answer? I think I did. Or maybe they didn't have it. So this is someone who did it last year. Let's go all the way to the bottom. That's the original way. We might, if this doesn't work out, we are going to have to look for it specifically. Um, let's see if we can find it. So this is them downloading. No one has our answer. Let's see. Surely someone has this. I don't want to get a hint, although I'm probably get a hint. It might affect my score. I want to get all the points. What? That's annoying. Get the heck out of here. So it was just in quotes. So that was it. I should have just submitted, but whatever. Um, yeah, so we can basically do the same similar approach. We can um, download the file to that specific place and swap it out like we did before. I don't think there's really any point in doing it again unless we decided to do it a different way. We could try doing it with an interpreter shell really quick. I think we do have time. Let's do that. Let's see. One of these has our payload here. So this is our payload. Let's switch it up. And we want to do that here. So let's do this. We want to change it to just exe2. We'll change it to advanced 2. And we want a Windows interpreter payload. So Windows interpreter payloads. And what I'm doing is well, I hate when I go to their stuff there. We can do stageless. That's fine. And I'm just looking for a cheat sheet. I don't want to read about it. Not right now. Let's look at this guy. Maybe he has a cheat sheet where Windows interpreter reverse. Perfect. I'll take this. This is fine. Okay. So good enough. We found something. We probably will have to utilize a different port. So let's do 449. All right. So, oops. I hit enter like I'm in the command line. We're not in the command line. All right. So let's build our payload. Here we go. It's because we misspelled Windows. Or they misspelled Windows. They misspelled Windows. All right. So this should be available for our code. We should have a couple of things up and running, right? We have our wow, I can't talk. We have our shell still listening and it should be done. I bet our payload's busted because of this. We may need to catch our payload again. Or is this it? This is our other shell, actually. So let me do something. Let's listen. Let's get our shell back. And let me see if we have enough time to be able to do this. Maybe we can do it on one go. Okay, we got it back. Let's cd back to Bill. So we're going to go cd, Command Shift V, Bill. We're back to Bill. Now we want to utilize our download and we want to use the same certutil command. Let's actually try to do it a slightly different way. So we want to download this. So this is the thing we want to pull, but we also need to make sure we name it the right thing so that we can override it as we're downloading. Because remember, we had some issues with that. So let's just download it with this exact name and see if we can get it to overwrite the file with our new script. All right, now that we have what we need, let's execute it. And one other thing we do need to do before we get going is that we need to set up our interpreter payload or our listener. So use exploits our handler. Wow, exploit hand or multi handler, and we need to configure it to work correctly with what we have going on. So we'll just do that. So we have this command. This is another good thing about having, let's fix this, having our commands here so we can go back and set things up as we need to. And it's going to be 4449. So set payload to this, set L port to 4449, show options, sets host to tune 0. And then we want to go run J. It's just going to run and in the background and catch whatever we need to. So now we can do this. It should pull everything down. We shouldn't have had an issue. We should see a different size actually in our payload. Oh, we're in the wrong spot. All right, so we need to move really quick. So we need to move here. So let's do that real quick. We're in the wrong directory is where we're at. So we're going to do that. And then we are going to copy our command again and see if it works. Oh, we're at time. How about that? That's okay. We'll finish up. It should work. So let's do it one more time. We should see a slightly different size. We didn't see any errors. And we do see a different size. Beautiful. And so now what we do is we do a net start and net stop for the service, and we should get a shell. Maybe a net restart this, perhaps. I don't know if restart is proper stuff, but we'll see. If not, we'll do a start stop. And what I do want to show is this. I want to show that we get a shell when this does work. So that isn't a command. What a shame. Okay, that's fine. We'll say net stop. I think there's another way in the thing to do it, but we'll do net start. It says it's not started. So this is the case. Actually, I used the wrong payload. I should have set it up as a service binary. And I did not. But it did kind of work, and it may finish working. We'll see. Sometimes you can get it to work. And we'll give it a second to see if it'll function. It did try. What we can do is just update this if it doesn't work. Okay, so it had some issues, expected. I really want to get this working, so we'll do this advanced 3. All right, so this should work. We'll give it a few more. We'll get it to work, and then we'll pop off for the night. And next we need this, and we just need to change it to 3. Do this. Paste. Successful. And this didn't work. We will have to kick off our thing again. Sessions. Oh, it's already okay. So it's still running in the background. Okay, good. And we'll drop this. Nope, not that. Dang it. Thought I was on the roll. Okay, that's fine. No issues there. And we'll just net start this one more time. And we should see some work. It should actually do something. And one thing we could have here is that I don't think it's the case because it should be x64, but sometimes there are some weird things going on with your payloads you select, and you just need to make them work for your target system. Like we had an issue a second ago where it failed to do something, load extension and response received from whatever, and that's just part of the game. You got to troubleshoot stuff. Unfortunately, the world doesn't cater to your whims in the hacker world, so sometimes you have to play. Uh, but yeah, we got a new session. And we can see our new session has NT authority system. So boom, we have conquered this in multiple ways as expected. And we have completed another system. So with that, we will call it an evening, and we'll see you on Thursday for the next live stream. So in case you're wondering, we stream Tuesday nights, Thursday nights. Come join us to hack. Come join us to learn some stuff, ask questions. It's a good time. And until next time, see ya.